Hello, and welcome to another episode of What I Know to Be True so far. I am really looking forward to this episode because I feel like there is just so much about this topic that just resonates with so many people. And I am excited to dive into it because today we're going to be talking about resilience. Now, I think that resilience is definitely one of my superpowers, but I'm saying that it is something that I have developed over time. I was not born with resilience and I was not a very resilient young youth. I was very destructive in all of my responses and becoming quite a victim to all of my circumstances. And as I got older, and I stepped into the world of personal development and mindfulness and creating a magical life and building my business, I started to learn the power of resilience. And I want to share everything that I've learned and also how you can start to use resilience as your superpower to create the life and business that's going to light you all the way up and give you a sense of confidence that comes from showing up again and again and again for yourself, no matter what circumstances or situations you face in life, so that you can go about your life in a way that is so fulfilling and rewarding. So, when we're talking about resilience, what does it really mean? And for me, resilience means the capacity to have a bounce back. It means to be able to go through something and come back from that a more aware, more conscious, more in love with yourself human being who learns from mistakes and learns from experiences. So, resilience is such a crucial part of both life and business success. And I am going through a personal journey that is too personal right now because it's, only been in the last couple of weeks to share. And it's quite a lot. And I will share it at some point. I'm sure I will make an episode about everything I have learned about this challenge. But it's too close to home to share right now. And I feel like if I start to share the story with the details, I might end up crying. And that is not the space I want to bring to today's episode. But basically, I've gone through something really personal in a personal relationship that has brought up so much for me. It's brought up so much about what I need to do to move forward in my healing journey with anxiety and my traumas around abandonment. It has brought up new senses of the responsibilities that I have as a solo mother, single mother with a co-parent and 3 children. And it has shown me that the skill I have developed in resilience is probably the most powerful thing any person can bring to their life. And so when we're talking about resilience, what it really looks like is resilience is not about just like moving on and go, 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 and let's just keep doing it and just like pushing through things. It's not about like pushing through things. That's not what resilience is. It's not about like being tough and just getting through it. It's about having this deep level of self-love. And from that place, having acceptance for what is in your reality, acceptance for whatever it is that you're going through. It's understanding your part. It's understanding how did I contribute to this circumstance and what has happened in this moment that has shown me something that I need to learn. So when I think of resilience and I think about the process of it, I'm always coming back to this incredible mantra that I absolutely love. How do I know I should have happened that way? Because it did. If it was meant to be different, it would have been. And that's that level of acceptance, right? And then you move into that part of understanding, how did I contribute to this? How did I allow this to happen? And I'm not saying taking blame for everything that happened. I'm saying through your experience, how can you deeply understand your part in it? And then the next part of resilience is, how can you forgive yourself and forgive the circumstance and forgive anybody else that was involved in it to the level that feels comfortable? I'm not suggesting anybody should forgive people for doing very horrific things to you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about forgiveness around the circumstances and the situation and the people that were involved, especially when we're dealing with, having a comeback from something that's a challenge and I'm not talking about trauma, I'm talking about challenges and resilience and challenges, challenge in your life, challenge in your business. And then from that place, really understanding how can I learn from this experience with a deep sense of compassion? How can I give myself so much compassion to hold space for the deep learnings that I need to have around this situation that has come into my life to teach me, to show me, to help me grow? And then that brings me to the last part of what I believe resilience really is about, and that is committing to the growth beyond that point. How can I commit to being different, to doing different, to showing up differently? And that might look, depending on what the challenge is and the circumstances, that might look like just giving yourself patience and time to heal. That might look like putting some contracts in place if it's business related to prevent that from happening in the future, right? So there's different elements of what you will need to learn depending on the circumstance, but the important thing is committing to the growth to move beyond it. And so when we come from that place of resilience, we start to embody this adaptability mindset. And we also have perseverance. Like, even though this thing has happened, I'm not going to allow it to pull me back into negative patterns. I'm not going to allow it to pull me, off my course of growth and off my course of healing and off my course of expansion and off my course of welcoming more abundance and all of those things, right? It's really looking at that connection between resilience and being able to move forward without it stopping all the growth that you have had up until this point. Now, if you have moments where you stumble and you feel like you do take a few step backs in your journey of moving beyond something or having resilience, I want you to just offer yourself self-compassion in that space, because when we are just humans, like at the end of the fucking day, we are just human beings, and like we're going to do things that aren't perfectly aligned in a growth trajectory. And sometimes we go up and down and all over the freaking place. And it's important to just give yourself compassion if you're in that space, but always coming back to that mindset of adaptability and perseverance, right? So when we're looking at resilience in business, some of the common challenges faced by business owners and the resilience that we need to have is things happening in the economy, things happening, market shifts, rejections from clients for offers, any financial setbacks or mistakes you might make, all of those things in business. Like, business is honestly the most personal development growth journey you will ever go on, because even something as simple as someone saying no or someone putting a negative comment on your content, you need to be able to have a bounce back, and you need to be able to do that fairly quickly in business, because your income flow relies on how fast you bounce back from those business failures. And so, or business challenges, right? And so when we're going through a business challenge, it's really important to just start to look at the facts. And when I say facts, I mean everybody would agree upon it. So not your thoughts about the situation, not your thoughts about the circumstances, but the actual fact, what actually happened, and not what did they do, what did, the actual black and white facts. So when you're looking at lessons in business, it's really important to stick to that, because when you can do that, you start to remove yourself from like the emotion, blame and accusation, and just start to look at, okay, how can I reframe this setback so that I can learn from it? And that's really, really important in business, because if you fall down the trap of going down this, analytical aspect where you're trying to look at humans and how they behaved in that circumstance, you kind of let go of the power. But if you look at the fact, and let's say it's someone who didn't sign a contract and they ended up pulling out or not paying you, what you would look at as a fact, and you wouldn't look at all the times they sent you emails and reassured you they'd pay you, all of that. You wouldn't look at all of that. You would just look at the fact. I sent a contract out. They didn't pay or accept the contract. I started the work, and halfway through, they stopped paying me, stopped communicating, stopped doing whatever. And then now you don't have that signed contract in place to start the proceedings of getting that money back, right? Or finishing the project or resolving it in any way. You would just look at the fact of what happened and you would take responsibility. Okay, I started that project before I got that, the other person to sign and acknowledge the contract. And halfway through the project, we had problems and I didn't have a contract in place. So there was no way for me to do a follow through with people's obligations within that contract. You're keeping it very factual, right? Now, resilience in your personal life is a little trickier. And I'm not saying it's not tricky in business, it really is, but there's just a bit of an easier way to accept and move forward. Now, resilience in your personal life is harder because your personal life is very much intertwined with your emotions and also with your environment in your how you're treating your body within that time frame. And also it comes down to having this element of you're always a human being that is healing through some kind of journey and trauma. And so if you have something happen in your personal life that's requiring resilience from you, you've also got this additional layer of all of your human experience that really does make that quite a lot more challenging. And so maybe you're navigating some health issues, relationship struggles, or just like unexpected life challenges. You also come in that area with a lot of history. And so when we are in business, although we still have all of that history, it's a little easier to separate ourselves from it. It's a little easier. But when it's your personal life, it's actually a lot harder. It's a lot harder to accept the reality of what happened. It's a lot harder to acknowledge the parts that you played in. It's a lot harder to forgive. It's a lot harder to see the lessons, and it's a lot harder to move through and have that growth. So when you're going through something personal, and I have gone through this recently where it's been a real personal challenge for me, an unexpected life challenge that I did not see coming, that broke a part of my dreams for my future, and it rocked my world. It really did. And so in that space, the first thing I recommend you do before you start going to the stages of accepting and witnessing your part and forgiveness and learning and moving forward, all of those things that we spoke about at the start of the episode, I highly recommend that the first thing you do is you put into place practices. So as soon as the shit goes down in my world, I am like doubling down on my mindfulness, on my meditation, on my yoga, on my gratitude, on my walking and connecting to nature, and on my getting enough sleep. Because it's already really hard. And if you are not supporting yourself through that with all the things that you love to do that keep you in a state of emotional wellness or groundedness, it's going to make it so much harder to then go through the process of accepting the circumstance, the situation that's gone on, and which is the start of where you need, to move forward with your resilience. So the other thing you need to do when you're going through personal challenges so that you can have great resilience is to really understand the role of the community and the support systems around you and cultivating a deep connection to those. Your friends and your family and your communities, whether that is your online communities or your impersonal communities, your spiritual communities, leaning in on the people who love you when the shit is at the fan and you are going through the most hardest thing in your life, making sure that you have that community support from all the people who love you is going to make things so much easier. Now, I will say in all of that you don't use that community and that support system to keep rehashing over and over and over and over again about the circumstance and who is to blame, because you will stay in that. And that's not resilience. That's just staying in your shit or staying in the awfulness of whatever challenge you're kind of going through. Now, of course, there is a time and space to process emotions. Absolutely. You have to give that to yourself. If you do not give yourself the space to go through grief, to go through, like if it's issues with a relationship and you don't give yourself that grief, right? Or if there are, health challenges and you don't give yourself that opportunity to feel the sadness that's going to come from, the journey of healing and all of that. If you don't give yourself the space to, feel the fucking millions of things that will come up for you when your world is crumbling, you will store that in your body and that will make it even harder later down the track. Okay. So resilience is not like this surface level, just think positively. That's not what resilience is. Resilience is a deep level of acceptance, and you cannot have that acceptance until you have felt your emotions and allowed them to be present in your body and had awareness of them and made, that space for self-compassion for every single one of those emotions. So before you go through the process of looking at ways to step into your resilience journey, you need to make sure you're showing up for yourself as much as you can. And I mean, for me last week, I can tell you, day one, I was on the floor just thinking like, how am I going to feel all of this and still be a normal human who needs to, look up after my business and things like that and my children and stuff. So if you've got the time and space, obviously take that time and space, right? But if you are at that very, like mind-blowing stage, like you can't even wrap your head around the reality of what's happening, you have to be able to say, even though I'm going through this and it is so hard, I am going to show myself love within this container. And sometimes it doesn't look like being able to do all of your normal practices, but if you can muster the strength or bring the strength into your routine to do the things that you know are going to support you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and with your health, you're going to be able to get through this resilience stage really quickly. Well, I say really quickly. It's different for everybody, but it's going to help you so much to be able to build up that resilience. Okay. So really and I mean, I did not want to do anything. I was like, I do not want to do anything. And I had this moment of like, I could just go into bed and eat a tub of ice cream and just like be in the sadness of this whole thing. And I decided, mainly because I can't eat ice cream because I can't have sugar because I'm trying to heal some health issues. But I decided I have two ways that this can go. I can crumble and I can sink into deeper levels of anxiety. And I know that only leads to some level of depression. Or I can quite literally force myself to put on my shoes and get out the door and go for a walk with the trees and come home and meditate and give myself some time for yoga and write down the things that I am grateful for and be able to put myself to bed at a reasonable time and go to sleep. And doing that makes these next parts of resilience so much easier. And obviously also, do not do it alone. Reach out to every single human being that loves you unconditionally and say, I am going through the worst experience of my life. I need to share it with you. I feel X, Y, and Z, and here's what I'm processing. And just let people hold some space for you. And some people will have time to hold space and others won't. And just trust that the people that do have the bandwidth, because not everybody will have the bandwidth, and that's okay because not everyone is in your support circle has to have the bandwidth because they're also going through their own journey and their own process. But the ones that are offering to give you time and space, be incredibly grateful for that and lean into it. And then here are the tips that I have. So, really looking at this acceptance piece and really understanding if I were to accept what is right now and I would surrender to the process of life and trust that everything is happening for me, even though I do not understand right now what that is, you can come to a place of peace with what is. And there is no timeline as to that when that acceptance happens. But when you get really good at this process, you will find that it does happen quite quickly if you hold space in duality for that acceptance with the emotions that are also coming up for you. So having that deep sense of acceptance isn't just going, okay, well, that's just what is and that's just what happened. It's going, here is the pain I am feeling. Here is how I can surrender to the hand of the universe, God, your soul journey, however you want to frame that in your mind, that everything is happening for a reason. And although I am also experiencing all of these emotions, I can accept the reality of this circumstance and situation that's happening to me right now. And then going through the next part where you're looking at how what role did you play? And this is all about self-awareness. It's recognizing your triggers. It's recognizing how you responded in that situation. And this has nothing to do with deciding who is at fault. This has everything to do with your own self-awareness. And so if you've been really fucked over by someone, that self-awareness might be something like, I noticed the signs were there early on and I chose not to take action and put boundaries in place and distance myself. That might be all you need to recognize. In some cases, you need to recognize a whole lot of other stuff. For me, in this time, in this moment, in this experience, I had to recognize a lot of stuff that I contributed to the situation. And that was really hard. It was really hard to say, okay, if I decided that I was going to take just, 40%, not even half, but 40% responsibility of everything that's gone down, what is it that I did? What triggers did I allow to take over? Where did I fall into my pain body or my parts of anxiety that allowed me to be controlled by a reaction and not a conscious response? And so when you do that, it feels a lot. It feels like a lot. And your mind will instantly try to beat yourself up over it. And so this is where the next part comes into play, and that is forgiveness. You have to forgive yourself for the part that you played, whatever part you played. And you have to forgive the circumstance for everything that kind of came to be. And if you have the emotional capacity, and I am not suggesting everybody does this, but if you also have the emotional capacity to forgive the other person, then you can do that as well. And also whether you want to forgive that person, because I truly believe that the only healing comes from forgiveness. But there are things in life that anyone will struggle to forgive. And I would never tell a person to forgive in that space when they are not ready or prepared to. And so as soon as you get to that part, though, something cool happens. And you can start to ask yourself the question, what do I need to learn? What is this trying to teach me so that I do better in this kind of circumstance or situation in the first place? Or I learn from the thing that's kind of happened in a way that I change something about it in the future if it were to ever happen again. And so that might be putting boundaries in place. That might be really understanding what emotional struggles you had within that moment where you didn't respond well. And I'm talking obviously all about the personal aspect here, not the business stuff. But it also kind of applies to that too. But really learning from like, why did this come into my life and what can it teach me? And that's not saying like, why did it come into my life because horrible things are supposed to come into everybody's life. But I always like to think about resilience as this ultimate opportunity to grow. I'm like not fucking being taken down by anything. So I'm like, whatever is going on, like I am going to learn from it. And you have to do that with compassion. You have to be so soft and gentle with yourself in that space. No shit talking to yourself or making yourself a bad person because of the mistakes that you made. You have to have complete and utter surrender and compassion to everything that you are trying to learn about yourself through this process and through your mistakes. And so what we got to get to next is that marvelous, marvelous place where you get to commit to doing different. And you get to say to yourself, I commit to doing XYZ different in the future. And that's a really beautiful place to be. Because when you say to yourself in that moment, I commit to doing different, you're now putting a new level of a new standard within yourself, on yourself, to be responsible for your own life. And when you have that responsibility for your own life, you will not get it perfect every time. Obviously, we're all humans. You won't get it perfect, but you will have an opportunity to choose differently in the future. And the moment that you can do that and you can commit to that change within yourself, that is when you get to that epic place of feeling the resilience. Because you're like, even though this thing happened, I totally accept it. I know the part I played. I totally forgive myself. I know what I need to learn, and I'm committed to growing so that never happens, to the best of my ability, that never happens in my life again. And that is where we build new belief systems. That is where we create new neuro pathways so that we can make changes and keep moving forward and fully activate resilience so that you are totally aware of everything that you need to do differently in the future. And one more thing that I want to say for anyone who is struggling with something and is finding it hard to find their resilience is that you have to keep everything in perspective. And that is that this experience that you're going through right now is one day going to be a memory. This is going to be a memory, and what you make of this memory and hold within this memory is going to shape your future. Because we often will revert back to doing the same unless we have that resilience pathway. And reminding yourself that one day this will be a memory also builds the resilience, because you know you're going to get through this. You're going to show up for yourself. You're going to build the strength that is required of you to do better in the future. And when you're in that space, oh my goodness, you feel so incredibly empowered. And so even if you have to say it, even if you have to say it while you're feeling your feelings too, like if you're having deep senses of sadness, for example, you can feel the sadness and remind yourself one day this level of sadness will be a memory. And that is such a beautiful thing to be aware of. And it doesn't mean that when you're in the future and you think back to it, you won't feel that sadness. But that sadness is not going to be part of your day every single day. It's just going to be an experience that you had at this moment in time. And one day that will be a memory for you. And so I will just quickly say that as I speak about this, I am not talking about grief as in the loss of someone you love who has passed away. That is not what I am speaking about here. I am talking about human experiences that shake you a little, that are challenging, but feel incredibly heavy at the moment. Okay. I just want to make that clear because this is that's really important to understand, because grief through the loss of a family member or a friend or a partner, that's a totally different journey, and you don't want to go down this resilience pathway with that grief. It's a whole different journey. So some things to kind of recap here. I'm going to say it a million times, but acceptance, forgiveness, how did you play acceptance? How did you play a part? Forgiveness. What did you learn? And giving it with compassion. What can you learn from mistakes in the future? And how can you commit to your growth to change and do different things differently in the future? And so I think that if you want to also build a little bit of resilience in this, and I'll just touch on this quickly, is that a challenge that you can give yourself is, if you're not going through something resilient, or if you are, I want you to identify one time in your life when you were really resilient, and just remember that journey and have like a lot of gratitude for yourself. Because if you can remind yourself that not everything is permanent, things are always going to change. Life is always going to give us these big challenges. And when we can sit in that space of remembering that I've gotten through things in the past, I can get through this as well. That's also a little bit of like magic to help you through the journey of resilience. So if you have a story of resilience, I'd love for you to let me know about it. You can send me an email, or you can tag me in one of your stories, reels on social media. I'd love to hear about your journey in resilience, and what are the things that you find helpful in the process of resilience and becoming a resilient human, so that throughout your life, no matter what happens, you know that there's nothing that's going to stop you from creating the absolute, truly magical life and business that you want for yourself. All right, I just want to thank you all for being here in this episode, and I will see you in the next episode. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always hit me up on Instagram. Find me at kerryanne.mckenzie, or over on the podcast channel, What I Know to Be True So Far. I'd love for you to reach out and connect with me, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye. Oh, and remember to continue on your journey to diving deeply into what it is that you know to be true so far.